And so what the core thing we were looking to do was reduce those barriers to entry, right? So by tokenizing uranium, investors can now own and trade physical uranium from as little as, $4.50, so for 1 ounce of uranium.
Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of Triangle Investor Interviews. I'm your host Lucian Valkovic, and before I announce my guest, just a reminder of a disclaimer. This interview and all my interviews are not a recommendation to buy, sell any shares, products or services. Always do your due diligence and consult with your financial advisor. Today's guest is Ben Elvidge, product lead at uranium.io. Ben, great to have you here today. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to the conversation, Lucian.
Same here. I want to start with you. When did you join the project as the product lead? Tell me a word or two about yourself. And actually, main question, what initially drew you to this project? Was it the commodity uranium itself, the blockchain technology, or something else?
It's a great question. So let's taking a step back. So background for me, I've always worked my whole career at the intersection of technology and capital markets. So I started in consulting. I then did a stint at Morgan Stanley on the investment management side there, so supporting lots of different initiatives there. I then wanted to do something a bit more entrepreneurial and joined a fintech. So I was chief product officer at an AI fintech for a few years, and then was figuring out what to do last year and saw the opportunity to join this project, which was about in April last year. And it kind of ticked all the boxes for me, both in terms of interest and also skill set, right? If I think about my career and what this really is also at that intersection of technology and capital markets and investing. So a lot of great work had gone on before I joined. So as I say, it was about April last year, and a lot of work was done in finding the right partners and thinking about the legal structure. So that had gone on for about 2 years before I joined last year. And really, I joined to accelerate, given that product background, the delivery of the product itself and the uranium.io platform into market. The thing that really drew me to the project was the clear use case and benefits of applying tokenization to an asset class that had some structural challenges that had meant the wider investor community didn't necessarily have great access to it, but was a really interesting asset class from a fundamentals and wider societal demand, macro demand perspective, as I'm sure you very much know about. So, I think the big draw for me was lots of talk has been about asset tokenization, and this for me was a real use case of tokenization moving a market forward in an asset class and an asset that is fundamentally critical for not just the investment thesis going forward, but also for wider societal needs. I think the final thing was the opportunity to work within the Tezos ecosystem. So I'd been at the periphery and understood a little bit about the kind of Tezos ecosystem. Now I'm fully embedded within that, but it does have a history of innovation, stability, resilience, all those things that if you're looking to create a product in capital markets that you want to make sure were table stakes, and Tezos and the Tezos chain and Etherlink, the EVM compatible layer 2 go way beyond that. And so I think that all the fundamentals were there from an asset perspective, from a use case perspective, and also a technology perspective that made this a great opportunity, I felt.
Excellent. We will unpack layer by layer. Let's start maybe from a product standpoint. What was the core problem you aimed to solve by tokenizing uranium?
Yeah, I think the core problem was that access to physical uranium as an investment was limited to sort of either OTC trading in the physical market, which has very high capital barriers and operational burdens as well that are there for good reason but are a hurdle to overcome, or via sort of the existing investment trust structures and other vehicles, like Sprott. And historically, they've traded at a discount to their net asset value. So that limits their efficacy from an investment perspective as well. So naturally, that's limited broad participation in the market and concentrated investment in a few areas. And so what the core thing we were looking to do was reduce those barriers to entry, right? So by tokenizing uranium, investors can now own and trade physical uranium from as little as $4.50, so for 1 ounce of uranium. So this means increased participation to enter the market, but also supports, those people who want to partake in the market, managing their positions and their exposure because they've got more liquidity than they otherwise would have had and are able to manage that exposure more effectively. Second order benefits as well that I think is not the sort of core problem, but come as a good benefit, by having sort of a more liquid market on chain and sort of through the uranium.io platform, we kind of overcome some of those opaque pricing dynamics that you have from a market only being traded over the counter. And so we keep the price in line as much as possible with the spot uranium price, but there will be some variability based on trading. And as we hope volumes increase and liquidity increases, that means that pricing becomes going from something that's printed maybe every 20 minutes during market hours to something that is more nearer real time. Again, encouraging greater participation and greater liquidity into the market. So really what it's about is taking a market that is super interesting, super relevant for a lot of people, and making it more accessible. And what we've done with xU3O8 and uranium.io really gets to the heart of solving that problem, I believe.
Excellent. Okay, you said investor can invest $4-5 in the physical uranium. So can you walk me through the process? I have $5. I want to invest in uranium. How can I do it?
Yeah, so it's as simple as going to uranium.io, and then you've got two options. If you already have a wallet, given this is on the blockchain, if you have an EVM, so Ethereum virtual machine compatible wallet like MetaMask, you can connect that wallet, or you can just enter your email address. We'll provide a wallet for you, and then you fund that wallet with US dollars or USDC. So you can, we've got a great partner that can support on-ramping from fiat currency into the USD stablecoin. So you can use Apple Pay, you could use Google Pay, credit card, or bank transfer. You fund your account and then you click buy and you buy at the current price, and then the xU3O8 appears in your account. It really is as simple as that. If you don't have a wallet, if you do have a wallet, you just connect your wallet, fund that with USDC again, and again click buy. So it's something that our team have got down to a few minutes now, as they've got more familiar, but it really is very straightforward.
Yeah, it really sounds very simple. What are the standout innovations? I believe that question is important for investors to know. What are the standout innovations of the uranium.io platform that set it apart in the commodity investing space?
Sure. So I think, besides just lowering those minimum entry barriers quite significantly from millions of dollars at sort of minimum lot sizes of £100,000 to sort of $4 or $5, as you said right now, I think what we've really spent a lot of time, and I alluded to this earlier, right, is spending a lot of time around the legal structure. And I think that's what that's enabled us to do is really set apart the kind of platform and product along with the trading capabilities through using blockchain technology. That really, I think, is what's changed the market. So just to walk through those in a bit more detail and unpack that. So from a legal perspective, we aren't using a sort of special purpose vehicle or similar to turn the token into a security. Actually, what we've been able to do is use, English trust law that's enabled us to, the token then becomes just a representation of your kind of property interest. And therefore, if you wanted to then redeem and take physical delivery, you absolutely could. So you would instruct us to burn those tokens or redeem those tokens, and you could give us your converter account details, and we could transfer that physical into your account. So that I think sets us apart from lots of other commodity tokenization plays. And being able to do that and sort of enter the market at such low entry barriers sets us apart from existing commodity investment options that are out there as well. Now also, kind of because it is on chain and there's a live, globally accessible 24/7 market for trading physical uranium, that's a very big differentiation, sort of trading the physical, kind of getting that pure exposure, for want of a better phrase, by using blockchain technology makes it very different to what you would have if you were trading in the traditional OTC markets, or if you were trading the Sprott, investment trust, or if you were trading sort of futures. you've got it's near instantaneous settlement through the structure that we've built. And then I've talked about ownership throughout all of this, but we really think that is crucial to call out, is that this is actually, if you have, £100 or £1,000 of uranium tokens, you can take physical delivery of that if you so wish.
Yeah, you explained that very well. There are moving parts over here, traditional finance, commodities, like you said, and blockchain technology. What insights did you gain in bridging those three, traditional finance, commodities, and blockchain technology?
Yeah, and I think it's a great question again, and sort of certainly for me, coming from more of that traditional finance background originally at Morgan Stanley, I think the main insight, for me at least, was that there are markets out there where you can use blockchain technology to leapfrog the adoption cycle. And what I mean by that is, if you look at traditional assets, say equities or bonds, right, there's been a sort of prototypical arc of adoption that they've followed, sort of going from sort of bilateral agreements to paper agreements to phone-based to electronic trading. And then now you see that those traditional assets are looking to reduce settlement time even further by using tokenization and moving that to being near real time. What we've seen is that actually there are markets perhaps where, they operate and they're critical, but actually you can leapfrog going through all of those stages over years and decades through bringing tokenization and blockchain technology to those markets. You can move to that broader participation point much faster. And I think that's been the main takeaway from me, is that there are markets out there where it's not an incremental step to tokenization, but actually it makes a huge difference to the participation one can have in that market by sort of starting with tokenization.
Yeah. Who is your primary user base today? The retail, institutional, from Web3 native? Tell us more.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I think the interesting thing about the asset, and you're very familiar with this in everything that you talk about, Lucian, is, it's got broad appeal and broad relevance from an investment case perspective for a lot of different users. And so, primarily what we've seen in terms of adoption so far, when we launched in December, has been most activity from retail investors. And whilst we support and have built the user journeys to support those who are more sort of familiar with or Web3 native and may have their own wallet, and that's super straightforward, we spent a lot of time thinking about how we can support those, more traditional finance investors that are looking at commodities and looking at new ways to access commodities and helping them through the journey as well. That being said, so while most of our user base is retail investors and actually have been from Web3 based investors, if we look at the kind of login and wallet connections, we have started to see, as we've gone out and done more of these kind of interviews and attended more events, we've seen a significant uptick in the interest from smaller institutional investors like hedge funds and family offices. So we've got a number of live opportunities where people either know the uranium investment thesis or have heard about uranium or can see the benefits of investing in uranium, but the flexibility of having, a more liquid market and improved price tracking compared to the current alternatives is something that's very interesting to them. So I expect that from user numbers perspective, we'll still continue to play quite significantly in that retail space, but we're definitely starting to see some of that interest come through from the more institutional type players, seeing the benefits that tokenization can bring. And I think that plays out in the wider market in the discussion that's going on with tokenization across all.
Got it. How is the feedback? How is the acceptance of the product? What has been the most surprising, maybe, behavior or adoption pattern you had seen since the launch?
Yeah, I think so. This might be my own bias, right? But I think it's linked to that last question. I'd expected, given the characteristics of the asset, that it to be more of a traditional finance sort of audience that this appealed to. And actually what we were doing was removing some of those barriers and making it more effective. But what surprised me is we've seen, a lot of users come from the Web3 audience, so the more crypto-oriented audience, and using their own wallet and connecting their own wallet. So I think that's probably been the most surprising thing from an adoption perspective that I've seen. I think we expected people to see this as a longer term sort of holding rather than a sort of day trading type asset, and I think that's played out. So that's been in line with my expectations. But certainly, I thought we'd the balance of user adoption would be more in that traditional finance space, and it's coming through. But certainly, the Web3 adoption or taking to it has been delightful, of course, very happy, but perhaps not where I expected the initial success to come from.
Okay, what are the most common questions you get from the users? Are those technical nature, fundamental nature?
Yeah, I think the most common questions we get are really twofold. One is around the physical delivery aspect, and the other, and the safety of the platform is the second one, in terms of, is it crypto? Does it have the downside risks of investing in crypto? And what they mean when they say crypto, they're really talking about meme coins with, hundreds of percent annualized volatility. So to unpack those a little bit more, I kind of think the physical delivery piece we've covered already, in terms of you can take physical delivery, but what physical delivery means in the uranium market, as you well know, is about having that delivered to your converter account, not backing up a truck to Cameco and taking delivery. And I think what we're spending a lot of time doing, which goes to sort of more about where education's needed, is on, actually what this is and how we're using blockchain technology. It's not that we've created a new asset, right? It's still very much the same asset as it would be if you were buying £100,000 on the OTC market, but we've just made it much more efficient and effective using blockchain to access that market. So educationally, we're spending a lot of time doing that. I think also we're spending a lot of time educating people on the uranium as an investment, so the uranium investment thesis. I think those that know about the uranium investment thesis and are very committed and engaged, but because it's been a previously somewhat inaccessible asset for a lot of people, we're spending a lot of time, and actually we see in our campaigns a lot of success as well, of educating people on the wider investment thesis around the uranium asset itself.
Yeah, you explained how can this product be purchased, but do you have any upgrades on the platform recently or in the works to make access even more easier?
Yeah, and so we launched, and we kind of got out there, and in good sort of product management practice, we launched an MVP, and we continually look how we improve that. And so the biggest upgrade we made earlier this year was and again, the benefits of being on chain is that you get greater transparency of transactions when people use a wallet, right? So what we've been able to do is get smarter and more effective about how we do KYC, risk analysis, and risk assessment, through using those on-chain analytics and a third-party provider to sort of ensure that we have that compliance, which has meant we've been able to remove, and were able to remove, even more friction on the onboarding up front. So people, as I said and outlined earlier, right, get to uranium.io, connect your wallet or sign up for a wallet, fund your account and buy. It is that simple. And then if you happen to have been doing things with that wallet where you get a sort of alert flag from our third party provider, then we will ask you to do KYC. So we by no means have removed KYC. We've just made it smarter. And again, playing into the strengths of the blockchain technology that we have, is enabling us to make that journey as smooth as possible, and sort of, again, we hope encouraging broader adoption. So that's kind of the biggest upgrade that we've made. We're also looking about how can we greater support those involved in the nuclear supply chain that may already have uranium inventory in sort of participating in this tokenization process as well. And I think that's a big upgrade that we expect to deliver later this year too.
Okay, that's very interesting. I got a few questions from my followers about the expectation next moves from uranium.io in the terms of roadmap and future developments. Are there any other commodities that you are exploring to tokenize next? If yes, which one, of course?
Sure, yeah. So I think, look, I think the roadmap remains, for anyone that's built any kind of product, the hard work starts when you launch that product. So our roadmap is very focused on building uranium.io to be the biggest success it can be. And so that will remain a core pillar of what we do. And making it easier to access for institutional investors and those in the nuclear supply chain, as I mentioned, is a big part of that roadmap. Again, using the great partnerships we've got with the likes of Kurz and Uranium. But we are also looking, I think what we've built from the time invested in the legal structure and thinking about that has been time well spent as we think to the future, because it gives us a really solid blueprint for looking at other commodities that share similar characteristics, whether that's not just from a sort of market perspective, but also macro drivers. So if I think, to kind of name a few, cobalt and lithium become very interesting because, again, they share similar themes around meeting the needs of wider societal demands in the future. The nature of the drivers, like most commodities, are quite similar to what we see in uranium. Obviously, the storage dynamics and purchasing dynamics are a bit different to uranium, so we have to factor that in. But if you ask me to kind of pick a few, I think other transition metals like cobalt and lithium are probably the most interesting in terms of future roadmap for us.
Okay, where should interested users or institutions go to learn more and participate in uranium.io or access?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. Everything that we could possibly think of is available at uranium.io. We've got a great Learn Hub there. And we also have a support chat on there if there's a burning question that we haven't answered through the existing content that's on there. So uranium.io is the primary place I would encourage everyone to go to see what we've done and how to access. We obviously also have an X account for uranium.io, so that's uranium_io. You can find more information, and we post a lot of regular updates there as well about the progress we're making and the things that we're doing. But yeah, uranium.io is the primary place I would say that people should go to find out more information.
That was Ben Elvidge, product lead at uranium.io. Ben, thank you for this conversation. It was educational. Any final messages to my audience?
No, thank you again for the time and sort of really enjoyed the conversation. I think key takeaways I would have is, uranium.io provides direct investment and ownership of physical uranium using blockchain to simplify market access. It's really user friendly, as we've talked about, and importantly, physical delivery is an option if people have a sizable enough amount and want to sort of do that and have a converter account, they can. I think a couple of things to just also flag. We've commissioned some proprietary research about the uranium market, and so look out for that. That will be coming out, and we'll make sure everyone's familiar and aware of what's going on with that. And look, I think just from a wider trend perspective, tokenization I think is very much a buzzword at the moment, and I think it is going to be extended to other commodities. But similar to what we've done with uranium.io, I would encourage everyone to evaluate those mechanics of every offering. So ensuring that there's true on-chain ownership, there are redemption rights should you wish to exercise those, and that you're having the project's having a real market impact. And that's really what's going to define the winners in this emerging asset class of tokenized commodities, in my view. So again, thank you, Lucian.
Thank you, Ben.